Okay, and hopefully you all can see my screen. Is it title slide right now?
We're seeing your screen.
Okay, great. Thanks, Isaac. Okay, so welcome everyone to the January 18th, 2018 developer meeting hosted by Mifos. This is the first one of these we're hosting in 2018. And I know towards the end of 2017, we sort of fell out of having these at a usual rhythm. We want to get back in the habit of doing these regularly so we can actively discuss what's happening on the product, what we need to go into the roadmap, and then also use these as a means to do different technical sessions and tutorials and showcases for the broader community. And we'll try and have this open to all members of the Mifos and Apache Finner communities. So in terms of our agenda today, we started out with some brief introductions, which we've already gone through. I'll just go through a couple short announcements about recently occurring events and upcoming events. Then I have a few updates to go through around the product, both Apache Finner Act and Apache Finner Act CN, and just some updates around what's been going on with the community. And then we'll use the majority of today's call to begin discussing and hammering out some of the potential project ideas for the 2018 Google Summer of Code, so we can put these into our ideas page and cross our fingers that we hopefully get accepted to participate in GSOC once again. So in terms of the events that have been occurring or coming up, thank you to everybody who signed up for and attended some of our recent webinars. I have a couple of the links to the screencasts here in the presentation. So I have the link to our Intro to Mojaloop webinar, and then soon, once they're available on the Mojaloop website, I'll also share the link to the API documents that they're publishing soon. And then thank you to Isaac for delivering the How to Build a Custom Microservice webinar for Apache Finner CN the previous week as well. And I've included the link to the screencast there, and we'll be continuing to add additional documentation around topics like that. And then in the coming weeks, I'm hoping we're going to have two brief showcase webinars from some partners in our community. So I'm working with Sultan from IDT Labs in Sierra Leone to showcase the version of a core banking system they've built on top of Apache Finner Act called EasyBank. And then also hoping one of our partners from India who has a mobile agent management solution that they're integrating with Mifos called Mimo, that I'd like them to showcase to the community. And then lastly, just wanted to, sort of begin gauging interest on whether or not some of our partners or community members out there are interested in any, paid, more intensive training sessions on Apache Finner Act CN. So trying to gauge if we can get somebody available to deliver such sessions. So if you're interested, please shoot me an email or mention something in the chat so I can begin to gauge what level of attendance we might possibly have. And so then just wanted to update a little bit on where we are with, just the maturity of our Apache Finner Act community and ongoing steps in the transition there. So over the past couple of quarters, we added a number of new committers, and many of them are folks that are on the call today. So congratulations to Avik, who is both voted on as a committer and as well as a member to the PMC. And then congratulations to Yannick, Ayuk, Maxina, Nayan, Nikhil, Thin, and Zayed, who were all voted on as committers over the past couple of months. And we're hoping to continue adding additional committers and members to the Apache Finner Act community. So continue, making the contributions that you're doing to the community publicly and in the public Apache forum so that visibility can be used as a basis of merit for trying to get you on as committers. And then in terms of, code that's moving into Apache, we had a couple of votes across the PMC. One to vote in to accept the Mifos IO code base as Apache Finner CN, and that vote went through. And so now the code base is going through IP compliance. And then likewise, we did a vote around accepting the work that Rajan had done during last year's GSOC for Finner CN Mobile, or what was called, the Mobile Client 2.0. And so that vote went through, and we're now, working on getting the code moved in and going through IP compliance as well. And then if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the mailing list. Just wanted to include those links once more. And so in terms of updates around product development, I know, there's been some transition around who, sort of on the core team side has been doing the release management as of late. And so our release has been delayed for a little bit. QA took longer than anticipated. And then with some of the transitioning staff, it's become much more delayed than we anticipated. So the next forthcoming release is still Apache Finner Act 1.1, and it will contain, the enhancements that are listed here. So we're finally shipping a number of the GSOC projects that have been ready and are ready to go out to the community. And then once we release Apache Finner Act, we're going to then ship the Mifos X distribution that consumes that, and then as many of the mobile apps that are ready to go that will consume that latest stable version of the platform. So I'll talk more about this as we talk about some of the volunteer needs we have in the community. We're looking for members of the PMC, as they've already been doing, to help with the release management process and also to help with ongoing bug fixes, as we no longer have Nazir as a full-time dedicated resource doing this for Mifos and doing this for the community. So just wanted to give that brief update and apologize that we've been so delayed, but I'm hoping, once we sort of get this transition out of the way and then have more clarity around who's doing what in terms of Apache Finner Act maintenance, we can have some more regular releases and get the work that our previous GSOC interns, as well as some other partners in the community and our GCI students have done, shipped out promptly, so the community can benefit from this work. And then after 1.1, hoping to begin work on the Finner Act 1.2 release. Sorry, I'm just going to mute fonts. Okay, so in Finner Act 1.2, we'll be planning to ship the Swagger API work that Sanyam worked on, as well as a student from GCI, Shirag. And then going to check in with Nikhil to see if some of the GLIM and group savings with individual monitoring work, see if that's ready to go. And then also, check in about the credit bureau integration. And then in terms of additional releases coming up around our Mifos X web and mobile apps, hoping to get the next version of our Android client release. These are some of the features that will be included. And then also, working to get official releases of some of our other GSOC products out there, like the online banking app and like the mobile wallet ready to go. And just a brief rundown on what's happening with Apache Finner Act Cloud Native. So as I noted earlier, the code was voted in and accepted into Apache. So now we're just going through the IP compliance. We do have the infrastructure set up, so we will be able to start creating tickets on the Jira to track issues and features and whatnot that needs to be built. I know there's some additional changes that are coming into the framework towards the end of the month, but you can grab the current version of the framework from the GitHub repository and begin following some of the documentation to test out the features. And then there are still some demo server instances up and running if you need to test out the functionality. And we have a number of good pieces of documentation that members of the community have been putting in place on the wiki. And soon, members of Skylabas will be publishing initial version of a user guide on the wiki as well. But right now, just to clarify, the initial feature set for Finner CN is somewhat limited. It centers around credit unions, so it has good support for individual loans and deposit accounts, and then everything you need around managing the staff and organization to support those, and then some new functionalities that are more robust in Fina Act CN than Mifos X are the teller management as well as the handling of checks. And we're looking on trying to build out a process to develop a roadmap to help identify what needs to come next in the platform. And we'll talk a bit more about that on the call later today. And then the Fina Act CN mobile code is soon going to be a part of Apache officially as well. And Rajan is continuing to actively develop that along with a number of volunteers. And so encourage everybody to join the discussion on the mailing list regarding each of these projects. And then lastly, around Fina Act CN, at the Mifos Initiative, we're working with members of the community to try and deliver upon some tools to help the community more swiftly get up to speed on the next generation architecture. So on the hosting front, volunteer Ramesh has been interviewing a number of partners to document what they've done in the cloud. So we'll be sharing that documentation soon. And then we're going to have some documentation comparing the different orchestration tools. And then we'll have additional documentation on how to get, just a demo and then a production build up and running in the cloud. And then we'll be providing, recommendations around the deployment approach, as well as hopefully some scripts to help with these orchestration tools to deploy in production in the cloud. And then we want to build out a robust developer zone for third parties to come and interact with Fina Act CN. So a strong set of documentation, a sandbox, as well as clear APIs that are well documented. So we also want to continue to explore what tools are needed. So welcome people to type in the chat or post to the mailing list around what other tools they might need to better innovate or better test out the new architecture. And then the last piece before I touched on, some of the work we're doing for GSOC and some of the work we did with GCI, just wanted to update on the process around the roadmap. So given, we're now an Apache project and Mifos Initiative doesn't, own or guide the source code development fully, like we don't, there's no one official roadmap, and we don't, own any roadmap, but we do want to be, as the voice of financial inclusion across the Apache Finner community, we want to be a leading force to try and get the partners and other individuals across the community into consensus around a roadmap, and then have other partners share the requirements of what they're building for their customers into a common roadmap that can be guided for Apache Finner Act. So that's our goal, is to try and establish a process to guide a community-driven roadmap, and then try and work towards mobilizing partners and volunteers to contribute work to support the needs of that common roadmap for financial inclusion on top of Apache Finner Act CN. And so when I send the link to the slides around, you can click the link for this product roadmap survey here. This is just a brief survey we're circulating now to try and gather some feedback on what partners and others in the community would like to see in this next generation. And then in terms of how we're arriving at a roadmap for Fina Act CN, like we're going to start, the discussion of all this publicly on the mailing list so we can get members of Quailap and other members of the community deeply engaged. But some of the documentation materials we've recognized are needed right now, as we've spoken with other community members, is one, a wiki page or document comparing the functionality between Mifos X and Fina Act CN. And then we also want to have a clear wiki page that compares the architectures, because really right now the major differentiation and the long-term benefit of Fina Act CN will be the superior architecture that's in place. And then to help community members understand when or who should possibly be adopting the new architecture. We'll have like a diagram just helping to lay out when organizations should target trying to adopt it. So who are the ideal early adopters, who should adopt it when the solutions mature, etc. And then we'll come up with a process and a framework for the roadmap that we want to publish. And then once we've gotten some initial buy-in and feedback from community members, try and come up with alpha roadmap that we can share with the community. So that's really, the number one priority at a community level as we're getting the code bases in, is to try and get everybody in consensus around the roadmap process and really reinvigorate the community to fully contribute back to the platform as well as apps on top of the next generation architecture. And then lastly, looking at the volunteer needs that we have. So around Apache Finner CN, I still need to continue discussing with those who've been most active on the code, like what really is ready for volunteers to work on. But in 2018, it's really a priority to start getting people engaged on the new architecture. So don't want there to be any barriers in front of that. And we will and should have a lot of projects that need to be done led by volunteers, but don't have full visibility into that currently. But for Apache Fina Act, which will soon be 1.1, like I'll try and share a public filter soon of the bug fixes that we need out there. But there are a large number of bugs that need to be fixed. And now that we don't have Nazir as a full-time resource working on maintenance and release management and fixes of bugs, like we'll need members of the community to step up and really leverage volunteers and partners more so to get these bugs fixed. So that's one area. And then, as I said earlier, we want to work with members or committers or members of the PMC who can take over the release management process that Nazir was guiding. So I think, Avik and others who have already begun to step up in doing that. And then one project that you saw Steve discussing on the mailing list was trying to upgrade to MySQL 5.7. So that's one area we'd like to engage other volunteers with. And then we're still trying to wrap up the work that Vladimir did around the Mifos payment gateway. And so Steve is assisting on that, and Avik and others in the community like Yannick are as well. So we want to try and finally bring that to completion. And then a long-standing project has been an ad hoc reporting module. We still have a good amount of work that needs to go into improving scalability. Not sure how much we'll try and do around on that on the current generation, but if we can get resources there in place, would love to do that, as there's a great level of work that needs to be done there. We want to explore implementing the two-factor authentication to some of our client-facing applications. We have some needs around the SelfService administrative portal. We're still trying to wrap up our integration between Apache Finner, Mifos, and Stellar. And then also would like to do some integrations with the recently released Moja Loop. And so a number of these projects are also tasks we'll look at as projects for GSOC, but wanted to try and bring on volunteers to them as they've been long-standing projects and would love to get folks working on them. And then just to touch on a little bit of the ongoing efforts of other volunteers. So we're working with a number of product management volunteers to try and help us come up with this global product management strategy and also develop out requirements around some of the following use cases. So we're working with a financial crime specialist to try and build out what components will go into the Fina Act CN framework to help organizations stay in compliance with the local requirements around anti-money laundering, etc. And then we're working with a volunteer to try and craft out like what will go into the framework around machine learning and artificial intelligence and what community members need to do around that. Working with another product manager around capturing more of the needs around business intelligence. So what we're doing around dashboards, ad hoc reporting, data warehousing, and then would still like to wrap up the credit bureau integration that Nikhil is working on, And then we've got a number of volunteers that are helping with mock-ups and design, and these volunteers will be critical for heading into GSOC and also trying to get clarity around what tasks are needed on some of the outstanding projects that we have. And then this is just a reminder mainly for partners or others, but we still have the Mifos jobs board that we're trying to get up and running on Mobilize, and this is a place where folks can come and post projects or services that they need developers for, and then hopefully developers who have those skills can then respond and let these community members know like what the cost of delivering said services would be. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, please do so, as we've not really had much pickup and uptake on it, but I'm hoping that can be a way for people that need paid development to find developers who have the skills and availability to get it done. And then before we go into the GSOC discussion, just wanted to look back on 2017 GSOC, and then also look at our recent participation in Google Codein, and then we'll talk about this year's upcoming Google Summer of Code. So this is just a brief shot of some of our interns from last year, and then a rundown on where we stand with trying to get all of the code that was worked on last summer shipped. So we're still, a bit behind on a number of projects, but I think this is a pretty accurate representation of where we are. So with the mobile banking app that Dilpreet worked on, we've gone through a ton of QA on that, and now we're just waiting on getting the Apache Finner Act release out there so we can then release the mobile banking app. And then for the mobile field operations app, we have some refactoring work that needs to be done there. But rather than wait on doing the refactoring, we're going to get all the code merged in so we can start to re-engage more contributors on the code base and then hopefully begin to ship that soon. So that's both for the work that Tarun and Mayank have done. And then for some of the projects Naman worked on, we're working to get those shipped soon for Pixie Collect. For that really to go to production, we need additional access to APIs, but hoping to get a clear, roadmap and clear picture of what additional use cases we need built out on those mobile wallets in place. And then Rajan's working to get, once the code's over to Fina Act CN officially, getting the first version of that mobile field operations app shipped. And then I believe all of Ronik's code around the online banking app has now been merged in the main repository. So hoping we can work on shipping that soon. And then Gopala's code that he worked on around the web app should hopefully be ready to go for the Mifos X release right after we ship this Fina Act release. And then all of Courage's work, I believe, has been included into the latest release. That'll be shipping soon. And then Mohed, he's been blocked on the offline browser-based access and trying to identify, what the remaining tasks are there, as that's a high priority to get that shipped, as we've worked on it for a couple years now and want to have that available to the community. And then Nikhil, still waiting for additional sandbox and testing access to complete the credit bureau work, but I think we're getting unblocked there. And then hoping by next Fina Act release to also ship the Glim work he worked on. And then Kumarana's work will be shipping in this release, and then we just need to do final review on his UI to the web app. So hoping that'll be ready to go for the 18.1 release. And then we're pretty blocked on the payment gateway, but we've got a good team in place that's working on that. And then Alex's work around two-factor authentication is shipping. And then thanks to Sanyam and the GCI students like Shirag who worked on the Swagger tasks, we should be ready to ship that work by the next version of Apache Finner Act. And then I believe most of Tesura's work has been included in this version of Finner Act that's going to ship. And then just last update around, a quick glance at Google Codein. So the program officially concluded in terms of students being able to submit completed tasks yesterday, January 17th. and then the winners won't be formally announced until January 31st. So that's when we'll announce who the grand prize winners and who the finalists are for Codein. But this year we had, more than 3 times as many students participate, or more than 3 times as many, or nearly 3 times as many tasks completed. And then I think our number of students participating went up by almost 5 times. And so these, task counts don't add up exactly to 457 because some tasks were included in both categories, but you can see a pretty good spread of coverage here in terms of tasks. So a good number of coding tasks, a high number of research tasks, and then a good number of UI and documentation tasks as well, but pretty low on the number of QA tasks. So we'll be coming out with some blog posts to summarize all the great work that students did this year. But Google Codein was, I think, highly successful this year, and really want to thank all the mentors who made it a success through all their timely participation, especially Mohit, who helped a lot on the org admin side, both getting things running smoothly beforehand and also ensuring that during the program tasks were being promptly reviewed. And we'll be once again having a random selection process for which mentor gets to go to the Google grand prize trip in the summer to represent Mifos. And this year, to make it fair, we'll try and make the number of we'll try and weight the names that get added to the random spinning wheel based on the number of tasks you helped oversee or the level of involvement you had in the program, as we want to make sure that selection process is as fair as possible, and we don't want someone who maybe just signed up as a mentor and maybe looked at one task to have the same chance of getting to go on the trip as others who have mentored hundreds of tasks. But thank you everyone for that. And I look forward to talking more about all the great work that was done in the coming weeks. And then we do have a retrospective for GCI mentors who are going to be talking through that later this week. So before we move into talking about GSOC projects for 2018, just want to see if anybody had any questions about the updates that I just went through. Okay, yeah, well, let's then move into what the main purpose of today's meeting was. And that was to discuss, and start thinking about our ideas list for the 2018 Google Summer of Code. So just a brief rundown on what the process looks like. So our application as an organization is due January 23rd. The application itself is pretty similar to what we've always used in the past and the same answers we have to those questions. So we won't change too much of it, but a critical part of our application is having, a strong ideas list and page in place. And so this is both where we need to show we have a high number of mentors that are committed to mentoring, and then also that we have a sizable list of well thought out ideas and projects that students could work on. So we don't need to have, our full ideas list finalized by our application deadline, but we do need to have most of them fleshed out there so Google can get a sense of what students would be working on. And we also need to have commitment from mentors by that application date. So hopefully, Google can see that they should both, one, select us as an org, and then also, show that later on when slots are allocated, we have enough mentors to take on a large number of slots, as I'm hoping we can participate in the same level as we did last year, hopefully having at least a dozen students that would be contributing to the Mifos Initiative, and this would be in addition to whatever might happen directly under Apache as an umbrella organization. But once we have our application in, Google will announce who the organizations that are accepted by February 12th, and then students officially begin applying between March 12th and 27th, and then students and the projects they're selected for are announced on the 23rd of April. And then the official coding period begins May 14th, and then will end August 14th. So let's start out, by looking at possible ideas for the Apache Finner CN, and then we'll begin discussing ideas around Fina Act and ideas around our Mifos X web and mobile apps. And so I want people to begin or continuing adding to the 2018 GSOC ideas Google Sheet. So folks on the call, I encourage you to speak up now as we're discussing this, or now or after the call. Add new rows to this spreadsheet and then begin fleshing out the columns. And then once we have sufficient details, we'll move this onto the 2018 GSEC ideas wiki page. So for FinRack CN, we are looking at a number of projects that I'm hoping we can get students involved on, but it's really going to depend on the microservices that are available and the API access that's available, what can be worked on. So I still am not 100% sure. I need to discuss this with Marcus and others out there. But given, last year we were pretty limited in terms of what we could do on FinRack CN. I don't want to have those limitations this year. I want to really push for trying to extend ourselves to do as much as possible on FinRack CN and leverage this as a great opportunity to begin engaging a newer and broader community around the new architecture. So at a framework level, I think there will be some features that we can work on that can help to, bring FinRack CN to parity with FinRack in terms of features that were on Mifos X that aren't on there yet. And then there might be some, components around reporting that can be achievable for a new contributor without having to have, in-depth knowledge of all the microservices. And then some of the components we're working on around financial compliance might go there as well. And then I know on the web front, like right now the user interface that's in place is centered around credit unions. And so provided, the feature sets there enough for microfinance institutions, we could work on a version of the web UI that's more in line with the current Mifos X interface, so having that in place for FinRack CN. And then we definitely will try and engage students to work on FinRack CN mobile, and Rajan's already scoping out what those tasks might look like. And then around the tools we discussed earlier, I think we could possibly explore projects for students to work on there. So I know Isaac's been looking at Spring Docs for API documentation, but some of the other materials and tools we might want in place around API Sandbox or Hosting Toolkit could also be good for possible projects for developers. So do anybody on the call right now have any thoughts about possible projects around FinRack CN? I know I'm not in the best position to really, propose too much now, but as myself and others start to get our heads more around what is possibly ready for third parties to work on top of the new architecture, I'd love for us to scope those out as ideas and then build knowledge up around Mifos community members to mentor those projects so we don't have to wait another year to try and engage students from GSOC on FinRack CN. Sorry, Yannick, I think you were going to talk, so I think you came off mute. Did you have anything to say, Yannick? Okay, we can come back to you later on, Yannick. And then I was hoping for this year's Summer of Code that we might be able to engage students in working on, similar versions of mobile banking and other client-facing apps on top of FinRack CN. but there might not be the necessary, APIs or secure data access to clients and external third parties to work on that. But that's still something in the back of my mind that I'd like to try and see GSOC students working on. But I'll just, pause here for a moment to see if anybody has any specific comments around projects for Fina Act CN. But, the view I'd encourage people to take is, don't hesitate in listing something as a potential idea. I'd rather us think about it than explore it, or at least, even if it's not something that we can work on now, the exercise of coming up with what the requirements are and what we need to work on or focus on is a good exercise. So don't, think there might be an idea that we're not ready for yet, or it's an idea that's too, too bold or too forward-looking to think about. So please, if you have any ideas or needs, list them on that Google Sheet and begin fleshing out the details so we can think about it for GSOC, or just have it to add it to our roadmap and add it to our product requirements that we're looking to work upon. Okay, thanks, Yannick. I see your chat there. So yeah, continue to update me as I'm trying to get some updates from Marcus, as well as I want to, try and open up as much as possible to whatever the community can work on. And, while, Marcus is a critical person to have engaged in making sure he's bought in, I don't want there to be a bottleneck in terms of people starting to contribute to the new code base in 2018 like there was in 2017. So trying to address those bottlenecks and hopefully get more members of the broader community scaled up so we can start getting more folks looking at the code base and contributing to it. Okay, so let me move to the next slide. So for the current generation of Apache Finner, these are pretty much the projects I mentioned on the volunteer page, but we still, if we could find a student who could do it, would like to work on the long-standing scalability and performance projects that are needed at the platform level. And then we do want to try and get like a test lab environment set up around the Gates Foundation module loop. So we'd like to both explore doing integration with the current version of Fina Act as well as Fina Act CN. And so this could potentially be a GSOC project. So we'll probably scope out some tasks to make that an idea. And then we still have a number of, features or modules that we had talked about in the past that we could continue to list as ideas. So we need to build out more of an insurance claims module, more CRM capabilities. We've got specifications around a collateral management module. We still have ad hoc reporting, that was started a number of years ago during GSOC and never wrapped up. We've begun to scope out a number of, use cases that would be nice to build out around a comprehensive UI to manage, the administration of self-service client-facing applications. We'll probably still have work on the payment gateway, continuing to integrate it with additional digital financial and mobile money services. We'll probably likewise still have work around credit bureau integration. And then we have enhancements to accounting that could be done. And then looking at, doing some integrations with Lendo and other alternative credit scoring tools. But hopefully this is a question, that some folks on the call might have some input on now, given many of you are contributing to or consuming or using the current Apache Finner Act product. So I open the floor to any discussion or thoughts people have here. And while, we're moving to the new architecture and we don't want to invest too heavily in building major new features into the current version of the platform, this is still going to be, the mature product that many of our users and partners rely upon for the next 1 to 2 years. So we still want to continue to innovate there as well. But we'd have to, just make sure, given we won't have Nazir in his full-time role, make sure we've got senior Fina Act members who can help to, provide architectural design and guidance, and then also, provide API access or additional APIs when that's needed to enable some of these projects. And then Yannick, or Havik, in case you missed it, had a just question to the chat, was if there are any orgs willing to test or pilot these. And so, Havik, I can resurface that question to users once again, but we did have a number of folks that provided the baseline requirements, especially for the claims and then collateral management. But I do think we can get out some clear requirements for those and get folks to test that if we need it. Okay, thanks, Isaac. I see your comment there, and then Kumaranath, I think the priority of and people are free to come off mute if you'd like. You don't need to just answer or type your questions in the chat. But yeah, in terms of the scalability and performance, I'd say that's pretty high priority. I think just the concern would be, would a student be able to work on what's needed to get done, and then how much level of effort needs to go into it. But we know, that a lot of the scalability enhancements have been addressed by partners in their own, builds of Fina Act, but we'd like to get that into the community versions, and then hopefully, get the community version of Apache Finner Act more in line with what partners have built, so the partners can start contributing back once again. And then Yannick, the self-service, like the mobile banking app, we're just making the first version of it live. We do have a number of partners who have built out some of their own self-service apps using the self-service APIs, but there's a lot of interest out there, and I think people, once it's officially live, will be using the mobile banking app. Okay, and let me just go to the last page, which was around additional projects around the Mifos X web and mobile apps on top of the current version of Apache Finner Act. And so, I think we can always continue to extend our web app UI. So provided we can give, full clarity and full mock-ups, like we should have a project around enhancing the current web app. And I know, Gopala had to deal with a little bit of lack of clarity there, but hopefully this year we can, especially with the work that Rajan's doing around trying to get clear mock-ups in place, we could provide a much more clear and defined project around enhancing the web UI. And then would like to enhance and continue to extend the work Ronak did around an online banking app. And then we still have a project around trying to come up with more of a UI to enable, self-service, or not a self-service, but a self-guided configuration wizard when small institutions are using the system for the first time. And then on the mobile app front, Dilpreet and others are scoping out what would go into Mifos Mobile 3.0. We're also scoping out what additional work would go into the Android client. So this would be version 5.0 of that. And then Naman would like to, scope out both at an architectural as well as functional level, what are additional use cases for your mobile wallet projects, both in terms of, adding in more functionalities to go into applications, but also looking at how we can integrate it with both Fina Act and Fina Act CN. Yeah, so I welcome, anybody on the call right now to chat or mention any ideas they have. But this, is just an initial take based on ongoing work we have, ongoing needs in the community, and some of our ideas that were listed last year. But between now and the 23rd, I'd encourage everyone to begin adding your inputs to that Google Sheet. And then as they get fleshed out enough, we'll move them over to the official ideas list on our wiki. And then if you haven't, already signed up and expressed an interest to mentor, please fill out the Google form link that I sent around so I can have a clear picture of that. Yeah, Mexina, so the 1.0 will be shipping. So 1.0 was really just the alpha version, which never officially released, but the version that will be coming out is the 2.0. Oh, and sorry, I was confusing the mobile banking app. So Mexina with online banking, yes, 1.0 is going to be shipping soon. That's what Ronak worked on, and we just, we're migrating and merging the code over and doing QA, but that should hopefully be available to the community pretty soon.
Hello.
Yeah, Isaac, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I've shared this doc in the comments. So I developed some of these ideas based on what you put up on the sheet. Ad hoc reporting. I added some description, code bases, helpful skills and resources for the ad hoc reporting project, the insurance claims project, the collateral management project, of course, the belated mobile money payments, and a little bit on customer relationship management module. So the doc is available there. Just ask for access, and you can actually read.
Oh, okay, thanks, Isaac. And then as you're fleshing out more ideas, if you could try and document, what you've been researching around Spring Docs and documenting the APIs in case, I'd like us to get far enough along on that before GSOC, but we might have more work there. And then, given your deeper knowledge of Apache Finner XCN than most in the community, would like to also have you, take the lead on proposing some ideas there. But thanks for documenting those ideas thus far. So.
Oh, thank you.
Ed, can you please share that spreadsheet link?
Yeah, let me just grab it right now and post it in the chat. Yeah, and for the GSOC student or potential GSOC students on the call, I'm glad that you're on today's call, and it's good to, early on start to learn what might be working on. But we'll, once we hopefully get accepted into GSOC, and once we have more clarity around what projects we'll have, we'll have more of an official session for prospective students to come and ask questions. So sort of by design that we weren't really focusing on asking you or engaging you on the call today and asking you what you'd like to work on. But I'm very happy that you all came on, and hopefully you're getting a good sense of what the needs of the community are. And then we really encourage you, as you've been doing, to continue making contributions and really immerse yourself in the community and the different communication and collaboration channels, as that level of involvement and participation is a really strong factor and determinant in our evaluation of students as they apply. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of the hour, so I definitely want to, just hone in again on having people, add their thoughts to that ideas list. If you want to mentor and haven't expressed an interest yet, express that interest using the Google form, and then, just let you all know once again that we're going to get those releases on Fina Act shipped, but we do really need the help of community members with bug fixes and release management going forward. And then we are starting to try and provide visibility and clarity around what's going on with Fina Act CN, and are going to be guiding a roadmap process across the community, but really working to try and get external folks engaged and contributing to CN. So encourage, if you have needs or questions, to discuss those on the mailing list, and then also, document your needs in that product roadmap survey. And then as we have the open discussion about the requirements, and we have the infrastructure set up for recording tickets and feature requests, start documenting it there. But I want to thank everybody for joining today's call, and then the good chat questions that you provided. And then looking forward to hosting these developer and user meetings on a regular basis again. And to everybody who wasn't on the call today but listening in, thank you for joining as well. And I'll send out the link to the slides so people have clickable links that they could follow. So thanks, everyone. Take care and have a good rest of the day or evening wherever you are.